Well, thank you very much indeed. And it's my great pleasure to, I think, be the final speaker for today. I was here last year and I had a presentation where, even by the standards of the most optimistic outlook that could possibly be given, has proven to be pedestrian. The last year has seen the emergence of quantum computing into the mainstream. Quantum computing has not yet had its ChatGPT moment, but there is certainly a great deal of interest. And the simple reason for that is that quantum computers are starting to make a difference in everyday life, and the societal impact of quantum is certainly going to be greater than anything that we could imagine coming from AI. This is not an AI versus quantum comment. AI is emergent. AI depends upon the hardware and the compute, and the impact of quantum computers and quantum processors will have a disproportionate impact on what today we think of as AI. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the what. There is no reason for us to be mysterious about quantum computing. It's no more complicated than any other technology, and in some respects is less complicated than many technologies. And the great virtue of quantum is that, in comparison with other technologies where we get dumbed down, people dumb down the technology so that we have a bad view of reality. In quantum, we can be comfortable with what we are going to understand. So when you think about crypto and distributed ledgers and large language models and neural networks, the analogies that are used in society that allow us to grapple typically have a big gap. Here, and hopefully over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to do a gentle walk through one aspect which I think will bring to life the what. This presentation also aims to build upon some of the points that were made this morning. For those of you that were there, Jim outlined some of the impact that AI is having on one of his businesses, Juvenescence. And what I'm going to do now is, at the same time, take a step back and look at society and the world as a whole, but at the same time, in a different way, zero in on genomics. So that's the two parts of the presentation that I'm going to be talking about. Now, the slide that you have been looking at before this one had a couple of comments on it. It's not my nature or my style to read what's on the slide, but the reason that that slide was there was that no nation state of consequence is without a quantum program. I'd like you to try and understand that for a second. Japan, China, Germany, France, the Netherlands, the United States, United Kingdom, every nation state of consequence, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Canada, all of the Scandinavian countries, every single nation state of consequence has a national quantum program. Have a look on Google for the UK's national quantum program. You will see justifications for the very, very large amounts of money that nation states have spent, typically in 5-year programs. In 2013, China said that nothing is more important to them than being the leader in quantum by the end of this decade that we're in now. They highlighted it and made it more important than all of the other priorities in their 5-year plan. These are points that are in the public domain. There's nothing secretive about this, but we wander around in our daily lives because we're so busy in other areas, not realizing that this is going on. What is happening right now, what is happening today and over the course of the next year or two, is that all of that work, all of that investment is starting to become more publicly aware. I've been very lucky. I've had a ringside seat. My company, the company in which Jim Mellon was the very first investor, is the largest and the leading quantum computing company in the world. We have been chosen by SoftBank to be their partner in their quantum data centers. NVIDIA has chosen us and only us to have our machine in their data center in Massachusetts. We have partnerships with the largest companies in the world. Earlier this week, we announced quantum supremacy. It doesn't matter whether you understand what that means. We did it with JP Morgan and 2 national labs in the United States. And it allows people to appreciate with empirical evidence that a quantum computer not only exists, but it's far more powerful in certain tasks than classical computers ever will be. This company started in Cambridge. I was lucky enough and blessed enough to be the chairman of the Stephen Hawking Foundation. And the inspiration for this business was Stephen. I could do a whole talk and you would be riveted if we did a whole talk only on Stephen. But we're not able to today. And what Stephen said was that a quantum computer is of value because we will be able to unveil the mystery of the universe. And in doing so, we will be able to address the last remaining frontier of knowledge. And that frontier of knowledge is biology. It is our living bodies. It is, for example, our brain that we know less about than we know about black holes. There's so much to do. And Stephen's inspiration, and this was in late 2013 when he and I were watching a YouTube video or some video of some description about a breakthrough at the University of California, Santa Barbara, which subsequently was taken over by Google. He said, this is for real. Quantum computers are for real. That was the inspiration for my company. Well, of course, a decade on, there isn't a bigger market if you value something on the basis of a TAM, a total addressable market. There is work done by McKinsey and others. Not a big fan of these consultants. They just tell us what we already know and charge us. Nevertheless, they do have a brand, and some of you here might be impressed by them. $2 trillion is what they estimate the addressable market to be. Think about that for a second. What does that tell you? It tells you that in a period of time that is less than it took for Google to be a $1 trillion company, a quantum computing company is almost certainly going to be the largest business in the world. A combination of everything I've said in this introduction allows us to appreciate that that is a credible statement. I'm not in this presentation going to talk about the economics or the finances. I'm going to switch to something that's far more important. And it is all about the way in which quantum computers will impact us. This slide that I'm sharing at the moment is a summary of the company which I founded. In the course of the last 11 years, we've raised about $2 billion. My major shareholders include Honeywell, which is an American aerospace and defense company, JP Morgan from their balance sheet, not from their funds, Amgen, which is a biotech company and a large pharma company, Mitsui, which is a large Japanese trading company. These are my shareholders. IBM is a shareholder. For some reason, I always forget IBM, but not today. And we are a private entity. There are in this audience 1 or 2 people that I recognize who are my shareholders. Some of them are in the second row here. Of course, my wife's here and she owns most of it. And then Jim's over there. And thank you for coming. What I want to talk about is biology. Biology in the context of something rather mysterious. In the 1940s, one of the godfathers of quantum mechanics, and this year is the 100th year, the 1 century anniversary of what is considered to be the birth of quantum mechanics as a science. Quantum mechanics as a science is the science that is the nature of reality. The nature of reality is universal across our universe. These are laws that are obeyed by all the particles and the subatomic particles and the forces that we can imagine. We don't live by those laws knowingly, because we are at a level where things like gravity matters. We live in a world that is deterministic, and the computers that we use were invented by a human being, Alan Turing and others, who took advantage of what we think of as logic. But those computers are limited in what they can and can't do because they were creations of a human being. In 1980, two people came up with the idea of a quantum computer. One of them was a Russian a mathematician by the name of Yuri Manin, and another one was Richard Feynman. If you have a chance, the essay by Yuri Manin starts off talking about biology. And in the 1940s, during the war, Erwin Schrödinger, who's one of the godfathers of quantum mechanics, gave some lectures in Dublin that were later published as a book, where he again spoke about biology. In his case, he said, how is it that these very fragile states of existence, these electrons, these photons, they and the states that they occupy, the minute they're exposed to a different environment, they decohere and are destroyed. And yet, for as long as there has been life on this planet, biological life, including human beings, and in the case of human beings particularly, why is it that DNA, which is this fragile, small, tiny double helix, survives, so that my mum and dad and their mums and dads, going back 400 generations, 12 centuries, are unchanged? What is it that we can say about quantum mechanics as it is applied to biology in that context? It's a mystery. That question remains important. A few years later, Watson and Crick discovered in Cambridge the double helix that we today know about. And so within my company, Quantinuum, our absolute focus is on building the best machine that possibly can be built in order to solve the problem that needs to be solved. Some people get turned on by options trading and, I don't know, meatless meat and all that kind of stuff. And, I respect their interests. None of it adds up to a pile of anything compared to this problem. It is core central to society. This slide explains, somebody disagrees, this slide explains 6 of the areas in which the application of a quantum computer in genomics makes a difference. Imagine living for longer with dignity, so that the cause of the decay of our organs is something that we can take responsibility for in a constructive, positive way. This is not some science fiction about living forever. And this is going to happen in less of a time looking forward than when we look back to the London Olympics. In fact, my view is that this will happen within the next 10 years. And this is not a sudden waking up one day. The early stages in which this is going to happen has already happened. Now, one of the things that we should be thinking about is, why is it that a quantum computer has an impact on DNA and everything that goes up to our genes and chromosomes? The reason is that the binding between the 3,500 pairs at a DNA level, at the double helix level, is in fact quantum mechanical in nature. It is something we as human beings, even with the best tools in the world, cannot access. We can see the consequences of it, but we can't access it. This is precisely what a quantum computer will help us to do. This is something that I, this week, had great pride in looking at one of the first steps towards a completion in an aspect that will be a pillar or a foundation of a solution. And what I'm referring to is work that was published this week. The author of that research is sitting in the front row, and it's all to do with knot theory. And it doesn't matter if you don't know what knot theory is. These are all names, it's jargon. But knot theory, mathematically, is about invariance in the way that things coil together. And in order to match a family of knots that might only have 3 or 4, here you can see 4 versions of the same family, actually lends itself precisely to the kind of things that matter in our DNA. This paper is in the public domain. The accompanying accessible, easy to understand description of why this matters is also in the public domain on our website. If you haven't had a chance, the author is here today. I think this is potentially something in the future that could win many prizes. So please take note of this. It's very rare that something happens like this during our lifetimes. It's as if suddenly we were there when Einstein discovered relativity, except we didn't know and he was walking past in the street. This is of such significance. Now, I'd like to try and figure out how to get to a when. People always say, well, when? I prefer to think about a different question, and the question is why? Why is it that something gets unlocked? And it is all about the computational power. Last year in September, we, humanity, passed a threshold. It was the first time a quantum computer was built that was reliable enough and could not be simulated by a classical computer. Imagine that you were around in Manchester when ENIAC, or whatever, was it ENIAC in Manchester? I can't remember. Whichever was the Manchester equivalent suddenly came to life, and those vacuum chambers were buzzing up and down, and it told you that 2 and 2 equals 4. That was a tipping point in our societal advancement. This was the tipping point, and this chart helps you to understand that now, having reached that tipping point, we are very, very, very close. In fact, this year humanity, will have a quantum computer working with an AI system that creates information and makes scientific discovery that could not previously have been possible. You can have a gazillion GPUs and a bazillion LLM models, and you will never achieve anything like what could be achieved, especially in biology, when you align those two together, a quantum computer and LLM systems. This is a little bit of an advert, so I'm not going to talk about it. We are the only integrated quantum computing company. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to know more about what we've built as a business, just go onto our website. What I really want to focus in on is yes, you can see the red thing. This aspect of what we do. We do many, many, many things. We do cryptography. We do work on quantum error correction. We also do work on quantum algorithms with applications in data analysis. We have a very rich group of people that are doing work in the other areas. But I want to focus a little bit on this, which ties together everything that I said last year and which I was referring to this morning, which is how is it that biology is now going to be affected by a combination of generative quantum AI? So generative AI, yes, but generative quantum AI. So, and it is an industrial revolution. One of the core invariants in anything to do with looking at molecular studies for chemistry, for pharmacology, for drug delivery, anything that we can think of depends upon being able to predict what happens at the molecular and the submolecular level. And this little animation that you're looking at now explains how, with the addition of a quantum computer together with a large language model or a code LLM, and obviously the classical part being powered by a supercomputer, will work together because the information that it has is better than what the LLM has had. Why is that the case? The reason that is the case that all LLMs, all code LLMs can only tell you what they already can access. They do it better than we can, just like an aeroplane can fly better than I can fly. I can jump off here and I'll technically be flying for a split second. A computer that is powered by these GPUs or an exascale computer powering these systems allows us to access information. In fact, today I would argue almost all information that humanity has generated. But what it cannot do is access information that is at the quantum mechanical level. Those things that allow us to design a drug. Later this year, probably around September, we will be introducing the first product that benefits from this. It's in the area of drug delivery rather than drug discovery. How much is wasted when generics are compounded into a delivery mechanism that is universal but universally bad? What about something that goes for this gentleman or that lady there that is designed to be effective for them? This is not about drug discovery. This is about drug delivery. And this itself transforms the pharmaceutical market. That's why this is an industrial revolution. It is not merely yet another disruptive technology. This is not about doing something 10% better or 15% better. This is why nation states realize, as well as large organizations realize, that this is existential. Now, at the beginning of this conversation, I was asked by the Master of Ceremonies to allow some time for questions, and that's what I'm going to do now, because we need to be respectful about the end of the running out of time tonight. What I'll do is if we find that there aren't enough questions or you're too shy, I am going to do a little bit of a closing segment on an actual example of why this timeline comes to life. There's nothing that I was going to say, if you have too many questions, which isn't available online. I was at a conference in Los Angeles where by the way, in the last 4 weeks, the whole trajectory of my life has changed because of what happened in LA and what happened in Iceland when I went to see the world's largest and most advanced genomics company. But what I would have said is available in a video, and it's called the Montgomery Conference, the Montgomery Summit. The Montgomery Summit, if you want to go and listen to that in case we have questions here. If we don't have any questions, I'll then repeat that. So we're at 5 minutes to go. Do we have anybody with a question? And more importantly, young man, you there with the hair, can you give that to that gentleman there? See, I think I'll be able to see them easier, so I can direct them from here.
Thank you to someone still with a bit of hair. Thank you. My question is a quick one. What is quantum computing as it is now or will be very soon? Who is looking that in relation to a major challenge, which is antibiotic resistance?
So I don't know if I understood that question. So I'm going to interpret the question and hopefully I'll be approximately right. All aspects of the supply chain in drugs, whether they're vaccines or whether they are specialist drugs for the oncologies that we all suffer from, will be affected by quantum computers. And if I understood your question, the area that is specifically focused on what today we might refer to as vaccines is going to be affected by work that we, in fact, are doing at the moment with some of the largest drug companies in the world. And that is work, and I'll give you one example of what we're talking about. We are working with the government of Singapore. Singapore has an ambition to be the world's supplier of important vaccines. They have a wet lab. They saw what happened during COVID, and they have asked us to be their partner in designing a program so that by the end of 2029, we will have completely revolutionized the way in which we can be comfortable about these vaccines, where we can identify the risks to large populations, where we can curate them, and we can make different varieties so that the messenger RNA-based vaccines that we're familiar with from COVID might have less efficacy, but they won't have bad efficacy for the small population sizes that we all worry about. This is a big program. It's an ambitious program. Singapore chose us. Next question. I hope I got that right. I probably didn't. But anyway, yep.
Used to think I understood computers. I wonder if you could explain what the fundamental difference is between a quantum computer, an analog computer, and a digital computer.
Yes, well, I'm going to miss the analog computer out for a second because the vast majority of us really don't understand the difference anyway. So I'm going to talk about classical computers and quantum computers. So this is a classical computer, and many of you who have heard me speak before will have heard this. This machine has about 14 or 15 billion with a B transistors in it. And so all classical computers depend on their computational power for manipulating these transistors, which essentially are a way of conducting current. And if the current is being conducted, it is, shall we say, a 1. It could be represented as on. And if the transistor flips up, then the current stops flowing, and that could be a 0. That could be off. On, off, 0, 1. That binary system is manipulated. This is what Alan Turing came up with, and other people after him, von Neumann and other people from the histories, that realized that we could transmit information, particularly arithmetic and mathematical information, adding things up, dividing them, in a way that could concatenate all of these so-called logic gates. So a classical computer is dependent upon these transistors, and the history from the 60s till now is the miniaturization of those transistors so that we can do on this what, when I started work, which was about 1 million years ago with Jim and I are the same age, we couldn't dream of doing on a handheld. Now, a quantum computer, on the other hand, its fundamental unit of information, the way that we think about storing information, is a physical thing. It is a physical thing. That's really something quite incredible. Now, that physical thing could be a single photon or a single electron. And these things, because they're quantum mechanical, they obey different rules. Manipulating those allows us to breach the boundary of what was done before classically and what will be done. There are many, many, many brilliant videos about this. In fact, I have to say that the National Quantum Computing Centre here in the United Kingdom has some wonderful videos on its website that answer that question way better than I just did. We in my company have some videos. When I just read a script, somebody far better than me tells me what to read, and I do that. And then Microsoft have a very good set of resources about this as well. There's a particularly good video. And we're out of time. Thank you very much indeed.